Welcome back to the Tiga Tactics podcast, a show about self-defense for civilians by civilians. We discuss all things personal protection, including martial arts, combat sports, and street combatives. Our resident MANs, martial arts nerds, include co-founder of Tiga Tactics and holder of black belts in 9 different styles, Dr. Conrad Bui.
Hello, everybody.
We also have the other co-founder, black belt holder in 4 different styles, Patrick Vuong.
Hey, everybody.
And I am your third co-host, retired Army Special Forces soldier and champion obstacle course racing athlete, Evan Ultra-OCR man, Perperis. Today, we're going to be talking about Jeet Kune Do. Before we get to that, though, a quick word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Vulpes Training. We are on this is the official start of season 3 of the Tiga Tactics podcast and our second year partnered with Vulpes. So I'm super excited. We just ordered a whole bunch of stuff for some new Vulpes products. They've released new stuff, I feel like every other week. So if you haven't checked out their website in a while, go back and check it out because they have added new stuff. One of the things I just ordered was essentially the kukri, the machete style weapon from the Book of Eli, which if you've seen that movie, you know why I like it. You know why I like it, right?
Right.
Knives, survival, heavy religious connotations. Don't want to spoil the movie there, but I'm sure most of you people have seen it because it's pretty old. And I've got another Book of Eli related thing coming up probably at the end of this month. So just watch my social media for that. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So today we're going to be focusing on Jeet Kune Do, just like we've done deep dives in some of the other styles and bladed systems, Medusa, Western Piper, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Today we're talking specifically about Jeet Kune Do. So before we kind of jump into it and have Conrad kind of explaining us to a once over the world of Jeet Kune Do, real quick, let's just go quick round table. What are people's Jeet Kune Do backgrounds so people understand where we're coming from? We'll start off with Patrick real quick.
Yeah, my exposure to Jeet Kune Do, of course, is like with everybody else. I watched Bruce Lee movies and I got the cinematic version of Jeet Kune Do. And then as I got a little bit older, my cousin Conrad, the resident martial arts nerd here, he showed me a lot of cool behind the scenes type stuff and kind of exploded my worldview of martial arts by showing me Jeet Kune Do when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13, something like that. So
Nice.
and then ever since then, obviously I've absorbed as much of Jeet Kune Do as I could in magazines and books. And of course, when I meet people who study Jeet Kune Do, I try to absorb as much as I can and cross train with them. But we can get more into that later.
Awesome. Conrad, what give you not too deep. I know we can go all night here. Just give me some of your Jeet Kune Do background.
I started Jeet Kune Do back in 1990 when it was titled by some groups as JKD/Kali, and that was the time when Guru Dan Inosanto was really heavily into the Kali as well too. And so a lot of times the both arts were basically taught as one package. And so my original teacher is Jeff Jones. Later on, I became a student of John Lopez, and I'm currently a certified full instructor in Jeet Kune Do.
Very cool. I did Jeet Kune Do for 3 years in Elite Academy of Martial Arts in Manhattan, or in Junction City, Kansas, under Guru Nathan Hunt. And he's an instructor under that whole Inasano network. So I got to go to 2 Inasano in-person seminars and train in a big auditorium with Professor Guru and Dan Inasano, which was really cool. But yeah, it was definitely cool experience. And I picked that place when I moved to Kansas specifically because I had never seen a place that taught Jeet Kune Do as like a physical building. I lived on the East Coast and kind of traveled around the country, and I'd never seen like an actual Jeet Kune Do school. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm definitely going here. So Conrad, tell us a little bit about let's start off with like, what is Jeet Kune Do? We'll start there, and then we'll go into like the 2 big factions that people like to discuss.
Right. So I'd like to start from the beginning, just so that everyone has an understanding, because not everyone has studied Jeet Kune Do, or even some people don't even care about Jeet Kune Do. It's all good. So I'd like to start at the beginning when Bruce Lee started. He grew up in Hong Kong. Of course, we all know that his teacher was Ip Man through the movies, of course, and If you haven't watched the movies, really cool, really good movies. Not quite historically accurate, but definitely really cool movies. I would recommend you watch those movies. They're just well-made movies. Uh, just real quick, what do you guys think of the movies?
I loved them. I absolutely, again, no, there's almost every sequel that goes by, there's less and less historical information. Probably the fourth one, I think there might be zero historical information. But I love them, and I think it's a great display of trapping. I think it looks cool. I think it pulled. I know for a fact, 'cause I listened to some Wing Chun podcasts. It pulled a whole bunch of people back into Wing Chun.
Mhm.
Like it was a huge business boon for them, just like Karate Kid did with karate, right? So I think it was
Right.
great. I think it's great. I think Donnie Yen's awesome. I think the movies look awesome. I have some thoughts on trapping, which if you read a competitive blueprint, you probably understand. But yeah, we'll discuss it. We can discuss that later.
Right. Patrick, you're the movie buff.
Yeah. Oh man, Donnie Yen playing Yip Man. That's a dream come true for a kung fu fight film fan like I am. So they're all amazing, entertaining, wildly inaccurate, and super fake fighting. But I love it. The choreography is amazing. Having come from a stuntman fight choreography background, it's awesome to watch. But yeah, it's totally not accurate in any way and super fake.
Right. All right. So Bruce Lee grew up in Hong Kong and he actually studied Tai Chi from his father when he was very young. And there was a story, I'm not sure how accurate it is. I read this in one of these magazines. It said that he was young and he was learning Tai Chi, and Tai Chi has all these cool names as well too. White crane cools its wings, needle at sea bottom, really single whip, some cool moves, and they have cool names. And so Bruce Lee got in a fight when he was younger. He tried using his Tai Chi and he got totally beat up. And so he wasn't happy with that. It's also Bruce Lee, he was a boxing champion as well too. He won some high school boxing competition. It probably wasn't huge, but he did do some boxing as well too. He trained in Northern Shaolin Kung Fu as well as other Chinese systems. And I'm not sure if it was before Wing Chun or during Wing Chun as well too. He was always looking to evolve, even from back then, I believe. And so, one question, why did he pick Wing Chun? Patrick, Evan, any idea why he wound up picking Wing Chun?
I'm gonna guess that was what was available to him. It was what
Oh,
was
come
convenient.
on! Why did you have to be so pragmatic? What do you think, Patrick?
Well, he did train with a bunch of different kung fu instructors, and we know that, because documentarians have gone on to
Hmm.
interview these other instructors.
Hmm.
And so you got to think, well, it wasn't like the only, Yip Man wasn't the only school in town. Obviously, this is Hong Kong where there are plenty of masters. So I think what he liked, my guess is that he likes to be up close and personal. Northern Shaolin is very high kicks, you're covering a lot of ground, things like that. And we all know that Bruce Lee could kick, but I think he also realized that's not particularly practical in a street fight. And most street fights, you're grappling, you're wrestling most of the time, you're standing up, but for the most part, you're in each other's faces and trying to swing for the fences. And I think that's probably why he kind of started leaning toward Wing Chun.
Yeah, you're both right. And with Evan, definitely that's what was around. There wasn't Muay Thai, there wasn't BJJ. Even really the boxing, there wasn't really a standardized like boxing school boxing like Western boxing. So yeah, it was basically what was available. I mean, if BJJ was available, Bruce Lee would probably do that. If point karate was the only game in town, he'd probably end up doing point karate. So but what Patrick said is true as well too. I read some articles saying that he was very nearsighted. If you see pictures when he was young, he had these big Coke bottle glasses, and that might have contributed him wanting to get closer as well too, as well as him thinking maybe Wing Chun was more efficient than the other systems as well too. And so, that was his start. Later on, he moved to the U.S. because he got in a bunch of fights. He got into trouble. He also had to come back to the U.S. and confirm his citizenship because he was actually born in San Francisco. And then, so he went back to the U.S. And then during that time, he got into a tussle with a local martial artist in the Bay Area. And this happened in Oakland. And there's a really good book about it called Showdown in Oakland. But a lot of the Bruce Lee side, basically, Bruce Lee and the people associated with Bruce Lee said, there was a challenge match, something about not being able to teach non-Asians, which is completely false. But that's the story. Like, oh, okay, there's this old Chinatown Kung Fu committee, with all the masters from Mortal Kombat sitting in a dark room. And so they issued Bruce Lee a challenge saying, hey, you can't teach non-Asians. And so Bruce Lee said, I teach who I want to teach. He got into the fight with this local Kung Fu instructor. And supposedly, as soon as Bruce Lee started fighting, the Kung Fu instructor turned tail and ran. Bruce Lee chased after him with the Wing Chun chain punches and solidly won that match. And so that's Bruce Lee's side of the story, as well as everyone associated with him. That's their side of the story. If you read Showdown in Oakland, there is the student of the person who challenged Bruce Lee. The master's name is Wang Jakmun, who challenged Bruce Lee. And there's a student of Wang Jakmun who wrote a book. And it's very balanced, actually. It's not just, Bruce Lee's a liar, this or that. It's a very balanced book. And it shows that there's a different story to it. And it really is a myth that Bruce Lee was challenged because he was teaching non-Asians. That's a total myth. There's been a lot of Caucasians, a lot of different colors, nationalities training in Chinatown at that time, whether you were white or black. It wasn't like some secret society or anything like that. It was quite open in certain schools where they would just teach anybody who had good character.
So you're telling me the 1993 Dragon, the Bruce Lee story movie is false? I'm very upset here.
I'm sorry. We might have to bring that back to the Yip Man movies, which is very inaccurate as well too.
Speaking of ridiculous movies, have you seen? There's one, Birth of the Dragon. It's like 2015, 16, and it's got Bruce Lee and Wong Jack-man, and they like team up and they become like buddy cops. And it is again completely not factual at all, but it is such a good movie. The two of them are like running through, like beating up like triads. It's so good.
I remember that movie, and I think Wong Jack-moon was a Shaolin monk or something like that.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it.
All right. So, and we also have to consider the other side of it. Why did Bruce Lee, after that fight, of course, Bruce Lee stated that he was tired and that fight shouldn't have lasted more than 2 minutes and he needed to change things up. But if he solidly won, and he had challenge matches before when he was in Seattle with a karateka, and other challenge matches in Hong Kong as well too. Not a big deal to him. He solidly won those, but if he solidly won the other fight, he would have probably still stayed on course with whatever he was doing. But after that challenge match, Bruce Lee did a lot of soul searching, and a lot of JKD historians will admit that is the pivotal point of Jeet Kune Do, where Bruce Lee said, okay, my style of Wing Chun is severely limited. I need to evolve. I need to somehow improve upon what's happening here. So that whole book called Showdown in Oakland, that discussed that. And I think that has some good merit to it, because when, just like in BJJ, when we first started, and even to this day, when even after years of doing BJJ, it's frustration every class, especially when we first start, right? I mean, people are smashing you, people pass your guard, people are submitting you, people are choking you, people are just laying on you, you can't breathe. Every day is frustrating, yet that frustration helps us to grow. And so Bruce Lee experienced that frustration, in my opinion, and that's what was the pivotal point of that match there. And
Excellent. At that point, I guess you go continue the story. I guess he decides to start developing his own quote unquote style. I know people are gonna have trouble that I use that term, but continue on.
right. And so Bruce Lee, I think his brother did fencing. So Bruce Lee looked into fencing, some of the footwork there. He added in Western boxing, of course. If you pick up the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, there's a lot of Western boxing, how to throw the hook, how to bob and weave, a lot of boxing stuff, how to torque from the hips and things like that. Bruce Lee also looked into grappling as well too, and then I wouldn't say he discovered, but he was able to break down ranges from kicking range to punching range to stand-up grappling or trapping range, and then to grappling range, throwing, and then groundwork as well too. So he was. I don't think he was the first, but he definitely popularized those ranges of combat. And for sure, Bruce Lee was not the first in mixing styles as well either. He probably is the most popular in the current culture of mixing styles, but it's been done long before Bruce Lee did it. And so it might be that Bruce Lee was one of the first to mix international styles, so Eastern and Western, and he was more open to that. In for example, China, people would just mix styles from inside China. Or in Indonesia, people would just mix styles from inside Indonesia, and maybe some Chinese styles as well too. But Bruce Lee might have been the first one to kind of really take it more internationally as well too, which brings me to the point of sport combat. So Bruce Lee was a big fan of combat
I'm going to
sports.
jump in real quick. Some of that's just practicality, right? I mean, traveling internationally 100 years ago was not super easy or convenient, right? So it's not like today where the internet, it's like, oh, I'll just go online and learn Wing Chun, or I'll fly over to Japan for a week or two and train with a karate master like that. It's just not practical. So I think part of it is that, and he definitely made it. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about his legacy a little bit later, but I mean, the most famous martial artist of all time, easily, right?
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, and I think back in the late 60s, early 70s, it was pretty controversial to do something like that. So he was a disruptor, if you will, in today's terms. He was kind of a troublemaker in doing that, because back in those days, again, there was a lot of talk about the traditional arts with honor and respect and those kind of things, and you didn't get a good chance to go from school to school, because then people thought you were dojo hopping, you're disloyal, those kind of things. And Bruce Lee was, I guess, not the first, but one of the people during that time saying it's okay to learn different arts as well too. So that was just one thing Bruce Lee did. Another thing Bruce Lee did was that back in those days, weightlifting, bodybuilding, proper nutrition wasn't a big thing in the martial arts. He introduced that, as well as having good cardio as well too. So Bruce Lee started running. He started working on his cardio. He started lifting weights, which wasn't a very popular thing. There was a big myth that's back in the day that weightlifting made you tight and stiff and slow. And so, what are you guys' thought on that myth there?
I mean, if you lift enough weights and take enough steroids where you're like Arnold Schwarzenegger or like Ronnie Coleman, then yeah, you are going to be slower, right? Because you physically have more mass, right? But like general weight training, I mean, the benefits are, I think at this point are very proven. I mean, you increase bone health, stronger muscles. You get it's another form of cross training, right? Like it's got a ton of benefits, and if you're doing the proper stretching and mobility work, then it's not gonna limit your range of motion. Again, I know it's just one example, right? There's like a YouTuber, Instagram dude, Jujimufu, who like is enormous and does like splits and stuff because he works on the flexibility in addition to lifting the weights. So it is possible. If you don't stretch and you lift weights and like just kind of let your body do whatever it does, like me, then yeah, you lose some flexibility.
Right. Yeah, so especially back in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, there was a lot of myths about that bodybuilding. As a martial artist, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. But Bruce Lee, there's pictures of him hoisting some really heavy weights. There's a picture of him with curling the 45 pounds on plates on each side and a 35-pound bar. I mean, that's a lot of weight for someone to curl, let alone someone of his size as well too. So Bruce Lee was hoisting some heavy weights at that time, which again was state of the art, if you will, but rather going against the grain. And also nutrition was very in its infancy as well too, as far as sports performance goes. But Bruce Lee was all over that as well too. He did protein powders. There's still there's like recipes for his protein powders you can find online and those kind of things as well too. As well as he kept journals of him working out, and it's pretty ridiculous some of his workouts. There's some workouts where it's just a ton of wrist curls and a ton of form exercise. It's just different times when he during his stages of cultivation of progression there. So just a very interesting man and a very cutting edge as well too. If he was in his prime right now, he'd probably be using AI or whatever to see if he can improve using the latest technology. That's just my thinking with it, because in his time he was literally cutting edge at that time as well too. So which brings me to him researching the sports as well too: boxing, wrestling, judo. And so that brings me to Jeet Kune Do versus modern day MMA. And so there's I think if we take the Jeet Kune Do from the late 60s, early 70s, and we compare it to modern day MMA, it's relatively close. It's not exactly it, because obviously, we've had a lot of time to improve upon what Bruce Lee laid out as a foundation. And so, but if we watch the scene from Enter the Dragon at the beginning there with Sammo Hung there, it's a pretty cool scene. Patrick, you want to take them through that scene?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing to think of all the things that Bruce Lee made popular, and the gloves. If you look at the gloves, just starting with the attire, right? The gloves they're not fingerless gloves, but they're sparring gloves with fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And now, almost everybody knows what those gloves are, and MMA gloves are kind of mirrored or patterned off of those sparring gloves that he had. And so he's wearing the sparring gloves, he's wearing shorts, he's shirtless, and him and Samo have a sparring match basically where they go literally through the Jeet Kune Do ranges. They'll start with kicking and punching, and it's very acrobatic. And then they get into a little bit closer, they get the trapping, and eventually they get to grappling. And Bruce Lee takes Samo down and basically forces him to submit, to tap out. So it's really cool to see how that, again, not necessarily saying that he's the father of mixed martial arts, but he was definitely forward thinking. Again, if you think about this late 60s, early 70s, if you took a kung fu guy, you threw him to the ground, he'd have no idea what to do. Wait, what's an armbar? What's a berimbolo? Like clueless. And then it works the other way around too. You take a judo guy, you take a wrestler, and all of a sudden you start throwing kicks and punches and eye jabs. They'd be like, "What the heck's going on here?" So for him to encapsulate the mixed martial arts mentality in one fight scene, so many decades before the UFC, that's pretty cool.
I remember watching that movie in like the late '90s after UFC started becoming more popular, and I was like, there's an armbar in Enter the Dragon?" I remember picking up the VHS and like looking on the back, be like, when was this filmed? I was just shocked that it was in the movie like that, from that long ago. Crazy.
Yeah, and that might be the first tap out in all of Kung Fu theater history. I mean, I remember watching that tap out. I was like, what the hell is this? This is so useless. Who would tap out like this?
Right.
To an armbar. Come on, no one gets caught in armbars. I remember watching it and like, what is Bruce Lee thinking here? But
Right.
he was just so far forward.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said, Patrick. It was pretty cool. It was basically a theatric mixed martial arts match there. And very cool, very cool. That being said, though, this was back in the early 70s. And so that was for the 70s, super forward thinking. 2020s, not so much, right? So
Right.
we need to kind of look into the future a little bit. Jeet Kune Do, when Bruce Lee left it, was still in its infancy. Bruce Lee originally designed Jeet Kune Do for street fighting. So there's eye jabs, there's kicks to the knees, kicks to the groin, those kind of things. And at the same time, he saw the benefits of introducing sport training into it from boxing, from wrestling, from judo as well too. So he was very, very ahead of his time. Yet I believe that, and we'll get into this later. Some people, what I call, they're stuck in the 1960s, 1970s Jeet Kune Do, and they put it like in a museum. So I call it Museum Jeet Kune Do. You look at them and they are moving just like Bruce Lee did back in the 60s and 70s. Again, nothing wrong with that. Although I think if you read Bruce Lee's work, you understand his mind, you understand his spirit of what he's trying to achieve. That was probably not it. And again, I could be wrong because I believe Jeet Kune Do is just a process. It's just a way of life for martial artists. So everyone's doing their own personal Jeet Kune Do. And so for me to say that's wrong and what I'm doing is right would be wrong as well too, because everyone's just following their own Jeet Kune Do path. And every path I think should be respected because it's good for that person. So even though I call it Museum Jeet Kune Do, kind of poke fun at it a little bit, I still respect their path and what they're trying to achieve with what they're doing as well too.
So let's back. What does Jeet Kune Do mean for our listeners here?
All right, so Jeet Kune Do comes from basically Jeet meaning to intercept, Kun meaning fist, and Do meaning way. So Kune Do, just a little nerdiness here. Kune Do is the same as Kwon from Taekwondo. Taekwondo meaning foot fist way. The Kwon Do is the same thing as Jeet Kune Do when you write out the Chinese characters. Kun Tao is what my teacher teaches, which means is the last part of Kune Do. Kun Tao, Kun meaning fist and Tao meaning the way. So it's just fist way, and Bruce Lee threw an interception in the beginning because he thought that was the most efficient, economical thing to do is intercept someone's punch, someone's kick, or even their intention of throwing that punch or kick as well too. So that's what Jeet Kune Do is. And when Bruce Lee passed away, it was basically Wing Chun, a lot of Wing Chun. It eventually became Junfan Kung Fu or Junfan kickboxing some people might call it that, which was Bruce Lee's own expression of mixing Wing Chun with boxing. And so the Jeet Kune Do curriculum, the traditional curriculum, which, I think any JKD instructor will teach, is the basic modified Wing Chun. You have Chi Sao, you have trapping hands, Pak Sao, Lap Sao, Bruce Lee's secret double Pak Sao, and you have Jet Sao, and you have all those traditional-ish Wing Chun techniques. I say traditional-ish because Bruce Lee modified it. So some people called it modified Wing Chun. And I teach it only because it's kind of traditional to teach it. The compound trapping, I as far as functionality, pressure testing it, like when I try to pressure test it in Muay Thai when I spar and stuff, it falls apart. But the very basic type of trapping, you can apply some of that in sparring. So I still teach like the complex compound trapping just out of the curriculum and out of respect and out of Bruce Lee would hate to hear me say it, out of tradition. And so
we glossed over it real quick for people. What is Jun Fan? What's that?
Okay, Jun Fan is basically Bruce Lee's name, his Cantonese name, Jun Fan. So that means little phoenix, and so I think, don't quote me on that, I think it means little phoenix, and it's just his own personalized style of what we might call modified Wing Chun, and so Wing Chun combined with some boxing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember looking for Jun Fan Gung Fu at some point and being like, I can't find it. It's not taught anywhere. I still remember looking at it and being like, what is this Jun Fan? Like it took me a while of like reading books to feel like, oh, that's just his name. He's just his name, martial arts essentially.
So,
yeah,
just to interject, speaking of intercept. So Jun Fan, if I remember correctly, means to return again. And I think his father named him that because he wanted Bruce to go back to America. But it could have the double meaning of the phoenix, because that, phoenix meaning to rise again. So I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah. So I just looked it up. It means from AI here, invigorate San Francisco or return to San Francisco. So that's what AI says. But yeah, so that's basically Bruce Lee's version of Wing Chun boxing and mixed in there with fencing. It has like some training with gear, sparring, those kind of things like that. I think it's basic boxing, basic Muay Thai that you would learn in any of those sports schools, basic MMA as well too. So that was just his early version of Jeet Kune Do there.
And talk to us about the two big camps right now, or styles, system, whatever we want to call it, of Jeet Kune Do.
The controversy.
Yeah, the controversy. Which I didn't know was a controversy until I was like in training for like a year or two, and then I was like, oh, what's happening? And it's like, oh, okay. People are upset about this still. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I still see the arguments online. I thought it died out in the 2000s. But yeah, it's the what I would say the concepts camp. But I don't want to use the word concepts because it's not just concepts. I would say it's the progressive, but I don't want to use that word either because it's political. It's the camp that's willing to evolve.
Okay, there we go.
And then there's the camp like what I talked about, the museum camp. Hey, their stance is, Bruce Lee was the epitome. He was the GOAT. What he did is all we need, and what he did is the best that has ever been, ever is, and will ever be. And so, yeah. So, I mean, if you follow us, all of our listeners know which camp we would probably subscribe to. But yet, that being said, I still have a lot of respect for the camp that are, gosh, I'd hate to use the word. I've seen it as well too, traditional Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Evan?
It's just like any martial art. What are you looking to get out of it? If you want the most effective, most efficient, I think you need to go with the one that's, again, choose my words carefully, evolving, willing to look at other places, is using the ideas that Bruce Lee set out when he set up his, again, a style system. I know we don't like those terms. When he set up his brand of martial arts, I think you need to look at that. But I think there's a ton of value, and if you're like, I want to know exactly what Bruce Lee did, I want to do just those moves because I'm a fan of his movies. I like his mindset. I'm a fan of his all the other work he's done. Right. I think you can do traditional martial arts just because they're fun, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, I lean more towards concepts. I think that's more interesting to me. I'm not like a huge Bruce Lee nut. I think I enjoy his movies. I think they were cool, and I realized the revolutionary impact he had on the martial arts world. He's he's the most famous martial artist. You could even say he's the best martial artist. Not necessarily that meaning that he can win every fight, but simply meaning that his mark is deeper and longer lasting than any other martial artist.
I agree 100%. I've traveled to many places, and almost every place I've been to, I see some kind of reference to Bruce Lee. Whether that's a poster in a restaurant or a book somewhere or even on a side of a building like in Europe. There's a picture of Bruce Lee somewhere, and I'm pretty sure in every major city there's a kid somewhere or somebody with a Bruce Lee poster or some Bruce Lee books somewhere in that city. So he is literally everywhere. Yeah, Patrick, what are your thoughts on the concept versus original camp?
It's I grew up learning most of this stuff through you, Conrad. So obviously I'm influenced quite a bit by what you taught me. But I also did my own research, read the books by both camps, and to be honest, like if let's say I ran into unfortunately a lot of these masters have now passed, but let's say I ran into Ted Wong, and he accepted me as a student. Damn, I'm in. You teach me all the original JKD, everything that I will learn it and fully respect it. But at the same time, like Evan said, like I know going in, like I'm just learning this because it's fun. Like I want to learn it because this is the original way that Ted Wong learned it, and give him all of that respect. But if I happen to say run into Dan and Santo, I'm like, all right, JKD concepts, here we come. To me, I would just go in it based on who's teaching me and learn it 100% the way they taught me. But then in my own personal life, I would look at Bruce Lee the way that I've always seen him since I was a kid, which is I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. I read all his books. I know all his tricks. And little side joke there. Little side joke there.
Yes.
And if you truly are a Bruce Lee nut like I am, you would know that evolution is the ultimate goal. And so I would not want to be trapped into thinking that the original JKD is the only way. And kind of bring it back to what you were saying about the name, Conrad. If I remember correctly, before Bruce Lee died, he said that he wished he'd never named it Jeet Kune Do because he evolved to the point where he's like, well, maybe I shouldn't even intercept the fist. Maybe my fighting is so good that I don't need to intercept the fist, right? And so if I remember correctly, he actually didn't even like the name Jeet Kune Do at the end, towards the end of his life.
Yes, he thought that naming it automatically boxes you in, which is true. It gives you a label. People label you. People judge you, you're kind of boxed in because you have a label on it now. And so he thought he might have made a mistake as well too. And I'm sure if you're a Bruce Lee fan, a Jeet Kune Do fan, or a Jeet Kune Do practitioner, you probably have the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. In the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, one of the last things that is said in there is this. It says, if people say Jeet Kune Do is different from this or from that, then let the name of Jeet Kune Do be wiped out. For that is what it is, just a name. Please don't fuss over it. And so that's the very last quote in the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. It's just a name. Please don't fuss over it. And so that's why I'm so loose in my definition of Jeet Kune Do. Everyone is on their Jeet Kune Do journey. Bruce Lee wanted Jeet Kune Do as just a process, a way of learning, a way of investigating, a way of growing. And everyone has their own path of growth. And so Bruce Lee thought, if I named it Jeet Kune Do, well, then that kind of limits it to my path of growth. But I believe he recognized everyone has their own path of growth. And Jeet Kune Do is just a name. Quit fussing over it, which brings me to the fact that, he died at 32. We're all older than him at this point. Which is kind of weird because I always looked up to him as such a wise person, such a motivated person as well too, and a successful person. And to realize I'm a lot older than he is when he passed away is kind of strange for me. So even though he passed away so young, he left behind a lot of good advice, a lot of good quotes. I mean, you can't go online for more than a week without running into some kind of Bruce Lee quote. There's one with the founder of UFC, Dana White, and he's talking about Bruce Lee quote, and he had it on his gym, and he said it's in my house as well too. I think Bruce Lee, for as young as he was a very wise person, and so I'd just like to share a few quotes and talk about this. And maybe Evan, if you can think of a quote that you like, Patrick as well too. But one of my favorite quotes of his is "To change with change is a changeless state." And that I remember learning that in high school. To change with change is a changeless state, and it was just kind of very. It ran around in circles, but it was very deep for me because basically, Bruce Lee was about change, wanting to change, and changing for the good. Always trying to evolve. In other words, I guess the vernacular for the modern times would be a growth mindset. Always try to improve. And it's so deep for me on many different levels, including spirituality as well too. The Buddhists say everything is impermanent, nothing lasts forever. Our bodies, it comes and goes. It won't last forever. We came from our mothers, and one day we will return to the earth. And just have our molecules, our cells, our every atom of our body just kind of recirculate into something different, and that also holds a very deep meaning for me too. Change is just so deep in many ways. Whether it's somebody suffering, take a few deep breaths, realize that when you breathe in and you breathe out, that process just started and it stopped, and you'll start a new process. You'll start and you'll stop. And just like when you suffer, you'll start suffering, but then that process will stop and that'll move on, just like these breaths you're taking. And so to change with changeless state, such a deep and very profound, but yet so simple. Patrick, you want to share one of your favorite quotes?
Yeah, every 5 years or so, I have a new Bruce Lee quote. Just as you said, he was like a fountain of wisdom, and sometimes based on like where I am in the stage of my life, some quotes hit me harder than others. And right now, my favorite quote of Bruce's is "Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." And when I was younger, that seemed like very pessimistic to me. But now that I've gotten older, I realize that life is really difficult. And the millennials these days call it adulting. You got to grow up. You have all these responsibilities. Sometimes the way of the world, it feels like you're carrying the entire weight of the world on your shoulders. Bad things happen. Random things happen to you. Your loved ones get old. They get sick. They die.
Right.
And this one quote just makes me flip the switch, because it's very easy for people to just say, why me? Why is this happening to me? And this quote reminds me, like, no, we shouldn't be we shouldn't be praying for these things to go away. We should be praying to have the strength to endure them because life is difficult, you know.
Yeah.
And I then remember his life and how, you know, obviously he died early, but he endured a lot too. You know, he had many physical problems. He had injuries. He had a lot of social negative social interactions, you know, with racism, discrimination, all kinds of things. You know, and he really fought to succeed, and that's why he's so inspirational.
Yeah, I really like that quote too. You know, the fact of the matter is we all suffer. And if we can understand that we all suffer, when you do have suffering, you're ready for it. You're like, okay, I understand there's going to be suffering in life. Luckily, it's not all suffering, but there is going to be some suffering. So if I accept that, and when I do suffer, because like what you said, eventually we're all going to suffer one way or the other, whether it's our health or somebody else's health. You know, age usually gets to us one way or another. You know, we're all going to suffer one way or another. And, and we understand that when it does come, it's not so bad. And then, because I know that I suffer and that everyone else suffers, when someone isn't in their most resourceful state, maybe they said something mean, or they push me out of the way, or they cut in front of me, I can understand that, man, maybe this person's suffering. Maybe something's happening to this person. Just let it go. Just let it go. So by understanding that deeply, and I'm still practicing it. I'm still really trying to practice it. But to understand that deeply, I'm able to go, okay, yeah, just let that go. Maybe they're having a bad day, because we all suffer. So a really good quote there, Patrick. Thanks for sharing that one. Evan, what about you? Any good quotes you like?
I'm going to go with one. I'm pretty sure it's in my Combatives Blueprint book. I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks
Ah,
once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times.
nice.
Obviously, for martial arts, that's very applicable. For Tiga Tactics and our like reductionist, simplistic, use this method, I think that's very applicable. For if you've done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you ever roll with someone who has like, especially like some black belts, like they have quote unquote their move, and like everything just funnels. It's just this big decision tree, and it just funnels down to that one move, that one submission. I think there's a lot to be said with being just persistent and consistent and being dedicated as an endurance athlete. I mean, I know that to be true as a martial artist. I know it to be true as someone who did well in school. I know that to be true. Religion, I know that to be true. Right? It's just there's sometimes in society, I feel like there's an underappreciated look at just being just showing up, just being consistent and sticking with something long after sometimes it's fun or it's I think that consistency and persistence will really take you very far in life. So
I like it. I like it. Yeah, and I never thought about thinking outside of the box with that quote. So I thanks for bringing that up and connecting it to different parts, because when we understand one thing deeply, we can transfer it to many different things. So very cool, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I want to share some very common quotes in the Jeet Kune Do world as well too. Bruce Lee did say absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add specifically that which is your own. And so that's a quote that's thrown around quite a bit, and it kind of sometimes I think some people translate it wrong, because absorb what is useful. That's a tough one, because sometimes we're not at the level of
yeah,
understanding, the level of wisdom to say something is useful or not. So that for us to quote that and to throw that quote around and to share it with our students, it's sometimes it can be a little misleading, and I think a lot of people are misled by that to say, I'm able to judge what is useful and what is useless, and so I find that quote sometimes it hinders a person's growth as well too. So I'm sure that was not what Bruce Lee's intention was. But when Jeet Kune Do people throw it around, I find sometimes like, well, I'm just going to absorb what is useful. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, how are you to decide what is useful and what is useless? But Patrick, Evan, jump in. You guys got any thoughts on this quote?
Yeah, that was actually going to be my backup quote if Patrick stole my quote. And I think, like you said, yeah, if there's a tendency, you get exposed to a new move or a new thing, and you're like, well, I don't like this, and then you just discard it right off the bat. I think there's a problem with giving up too quickly. Using that quote, but I think after you've absorbed, maybe gone through the whole system or explored it deeply enough, then eventually you should have the wisdom to be able to apply that.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with you guys. I also think I have 2 points with this topic. One is I often see online martial artists comparing styles, and they'll say, well, this is why jujitsu doesn't work because they do this, and so I would just counter with this. But the problem is that martial artist does not practice jujitsu. So they're just showing a technique that they have very shallow information on. They don't fully understand that technique. And so, of course, it's easy to defeat that technique because they're using it wrong, or they don't know all the options that technique gives you. Something like, if you practice, if our listeners practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, everybody knows if you get somebody in the high guard, you're like 75% to a submission, right? Just having someone in your high guard is very bad for the person in that position. But if you've never practiced jiu-jitsu before and someone has you in the high guard, you're like, I'll just pound my way out of this. Not having, like, as Conrad said, not having all of the information, not being wise enough to know whether this is useful or not, is kind of defeats the purpose of saying, like, oh, I can defeat them by doing this, or I can defeat that by doing that. So I think it's really important. And again, this is your influence, Conrad, but you always taught me, like, you should try to learn a system, or not even a system, but like just try to learn a concept as fully as possible before making a judgment call on it. And so that brings me to my other point, which is I was sparring my friend one time, and we were doing basically like kickboxing rules. And up until that point, I'd always told all my students, never duck. Don't duck. If you duck, you're going to get uppercutted. You're going to get knee to the head. Bad things are going to happen to you if you duck. So I'm sparring my friend. He does a spinning hook kick. And what do? I duck. And then I literally froze, and I said, dude, I just ducked. And he's like, what the hell? You say you never duck. And if I had listened to my own advice, I probably would have got kicked in the head, right? So you don't know what's useless and what's useful until you really absorbed it, pressure tested it, done all the training to really establish whether this move is useful or whether you should discard it. And that brings me to my last point, which is something, again, Conrad, that you taught me, is that you really shouldn't discard anything. You learn it, catalog it. Maybe you catalog it into like low probability technique, but you should never discard it because, like me ducking, you never know when you might need it.
Right. And how many times, I know you both trained BJJ, how many times, or even striking, how many times have you seen someone pull off a move that you totally thought was useless? And all of a sudden they pulled out the move, and you think, oh my gosh, this stuff works. What the hell? And we see that in whether it's striking or grappling or MMA, spinning hook kicks. Oh, that's useless. Bow, somebody gets knocked out with it. Spinning back kick. Bam, John Jones just lands that on somebody. Okay, one for me is the scissor sweep. I remember, okay, I learned the scissor sweep at white belt. I tried using it. Useless. I was like, this is useless. I'm throwing it away. And then I see this black belt doing it in competition. A freaking scissor sweep. I'm like, what? That stuff works.
You just never know.
Absolutely.
All right. I want to throw out another one there that's and also going back to what you were saying, Evan, about how this applies to so many different things in life, like whether you're studying finances or religion or relationships or whatever, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless. I take the same approach with all those other studies as well too. I don't go into like, for example, studying a different religion going, oh, that's useless information. No, I try to think of everything as possibly useful, and maybe I agree with it or I disagree with it. I'm still going to respect it and set it aside because it might prove useful later on. So that observe what is useful, reject what is useless. Sometimes actually isn't quite beneficial for our growth. But that being said, the next one I'd like to talk about is basically if you look at the symbol for Jeet Kune Do, there's some Chinese characters around the arrows there, and those symbols translate to basically using no way as way and having no limitation as limitation. And so that's a very interesting concept as well too. So uh, just like when Bruce Lee thought, and you brought this up, Patrick, Bruce Lee thought he might have made a mistake coining or giving the name of Jeet Kune Do to his process. That kind of limited his process as a way. But he also talked about, and that's right on his core symbol was using no way as way and having no limitation as limitation, which is profoundly deep. If you really think about this, it makes no sense, but it makes sense. Patrick, what do you think about this quote?
Yeah, I remember reading and trying to study it when I was a teenager and thinking, what is this circular stuff? I don't understand. I'm so confused. Uh, but as I got older, it started to take on different meanings based on the stages of my life. And one of the lessons I learned was that it teaches you to adapt. You think you've hit a wall, and well, guess what? You can either go straight through the wall, you can climb over the wall, you can go under the wall. And then uh, I think it ties back into his life philosophy. A lot of people don't know that he actually majored in philosophy. He was probably, I think, a semester away from graduating with a degree in philosophy, and so he read all the greats, and he was really into having a limitless mentality, not putting any sort of ceiling for yourself. And so this, to me, that kind of ties into that. And he's not just talking about martial arts; he's talking about life in general.
Right.
A lot of people think, oh man, this is this is it for me. I'm just gonna get a 9 to 5 job, and I'm just gonna grind in a job that I hate until I can retire, and then the government's gonna pay for me, and then I'm gonna die. And just having that limiting belief in what life is, what life can give you, can really set a person back. And so, to me, this quote is more than just martial arts. It's about life, the universe, Taoism, spirituality, everything.
Hmm. Very cool. Very cool. What about you, Evan? I know your former special operations forces there. Do you guys? I'm pretty sure you subscribe to using no way as way. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, so you need a base model. You need a standard model, and then you can shift off of that.
Hmm.
So that's what we have SOPs, standard operating procedures, is what we usually, quote unquote, usually do. And the reason you have that is if you have that standard plan, then I can tell my platoon or my team or my partner force, whatever I'm working with at that time, I can tell them an adjustment, and I don't have to explain the whole plan. I can just tell them the change, and then we can use that as a solution. So, um, using no way as a way, like, yes, but at the same time, like, there's a base model that you're shifting off of to get to the no way um, kind of concept, if that makes sense.
Basically, you have to have a way first.
You need a way first, and then you can go from that way.
Right.
You can wander off the path as needed. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a good point. You need a way first. You need foundations, and then I think also Bruce Lee wanted us to just open our mind, don't have prejudices against different things. So whether that's socializing with different people, testing out different foods, or doing different martial arts, we shouldn't limit ourselves to saying, oh, well, I'm a karate guy. I don't do judo. And so I think he wanted us to open our minds and say, it's okay to investigate different things. It's okay to try different things as well too, and have an open mind, a growth mindset concerning all of this.
Good stuff.
All right, all right. So one last thing. A couple things. I do want to talk about the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, which I've mentioned several times, and I want to compare that with your combative blueprint, Evan. I think your combative blueprint is a very updated and actually a more comprehensive approach to the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. Is that what you were shooting for, or how did you become inspired to write your combative blueprint?
That's interesting. I don't know if I'm sure Bruce Lee's methodology influenced me. It wasn't like a conscious, like, I'm updating the Tao of Jeet Kune Do for modern times. It was just more of like, well, what works and what have I seen as like a model for success? And it was basically like, be a little bit good at a lot of things, and then from there you can go as deep as you want. So it wasn't anything purposeful. That being said, I take that as a huge compliment, especially coming from you, a Bruce Lee fan. So thank you.
I remember when I read it for the first time, your combative blueprint. I was thinking, I just couldn't help but compare it because it's very similar. It's a more, I want to say, direct approach, because the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, there's a lot of philosophy in it and a lot of triptych type of things, using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation, almost poetic. And that's just how, like Sun Tzu wrote his Art of War, or how Miyamoto Musashi wrote the Book of Five Rings. And so that's just the way that they delivered their message, which is kind of cool too, having it kind of cryptic. That way you can apply it to different parts of life because it's so open in its interpretation. Yours is more of a Western approach where it's like, punch them in the face. So I thought I just couldn't help but compare your book with the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, a more modern approach, which is more pragmatic, more straight to the point as well too. So when you went into the ranges of combat, was that anything that the Tao of Jeet Kune Do inspired you, or just something that you did this completely separate from the ranges of combat that Bruce Lee described?
That was definitely indirectly through Jeet Kune Do, right? Like I remember at my school, Elite Academy in Junction City, they had ranges of combat listed, and they specifically had 7 of the 8 ranges I have listed in the book. So that was, in some ways, I guess I directly pulled that off of, because I remember staring at the poster and being like, well, that's a really interesting concept. I like how that's broken down. And then when I sat down to start writing it, I put 7 ranges, and then I was like, oh, well, in modern warfare, I think there's this 8th range, which I call support range, which is essentially multiple people using a weapon system to deliver effects on a target, whether that be artillery or close air support or close combat aviation. Or in modern America, I would say like the closest thing we have to support range is calling the police, right? Like I'm calling 911 and more people are showing up like to do work to take care of a threat. So even sniper operations, I would consider like an actual sniper operation, not a lone crazed gunman, right? But like an actual sniper operation has a spotter and it has a shooter. To make snipers effective, you need 2 people is like the perfect combo. It's not just one, because you have one guy reading data and doing calculations, and the other guy is just basically he's the automaton. He's just he's listening to what the other guy's saying, and he's aiming and squeezing the trigger. So the harder part is the spotter, actually, as a side note. But yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And of course, if any of our listeners, you don't have that book, get that book. I remember I took your webinar because you offered the free book. I was like, I'll just pay for this webinar to get the free book as well too, and the webinar. And so I have 2 or 3 copies of your book already. So I think it's very well done. So listeners, make sure you get that book if you haven't already done so. And finally, I'd like to finish off with the definite chief aim that Bruce Lee wrote down. We all know Bruce Lee was quite successful in what he he attempted to do and what he did. And it's very interesting that he has a sheet of paper that he wrote down his goals, and it's quite interesting how he did it. So I'd like to just go ahead and read that for everybody. It's just a few sentences here. It says, "My definite chief aim. I, Bruce Lee, will be the first highest paid Oriental superstar in the United States. In return, I will give the most exciting performances and render the best of quality in the capacity of an actor. Starting 1970, I will achieve world fame, and from then till the end of 1980, I will have in my possession $10 million. I will live the way I please and achieve inner harmony and happiness." And so, and he signed it and he dated it 1969. All right, so very interesting. Few years later, definitely he was on his way. Entered the Dragon was made, became a worldwide superstar, and I think he was definitely on his way. So he used a lot of principles, what we're going to be going over in our goal setting webinar for warriors. And we'll talk more about that definite chief aim. But I remember when I first saw this, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Bruce Lee was a fan of a lot of self-help gurus, if you will, including Napoleon Hill. And this is a lot of the techniques and the technology back then that Napoleon Hill was teaching. You know, you want to write these things down. You want to make sure you have a plan for it. You give it a start date, you give it an end date, and you write down what you want to achieve. And I'm sure he had this up somewhere where he was reading it regularly as well too. And so it gives your mind something to aim for. But we'll talk more about that on Sunday.
Absolutely. And speaking of the webinar, Patrick, where can they sign up? Give us some of the details here.
Yeah, they can go to tigatactics.com/links, and that should be the first event on that page. They can sign up depending on when they listen to this. If you sign up, let's see here. Well, I don't know if they'll be listening in time, but
you sign up right now.
You sign up right now.
Get on your phone, get on your computer, sign up now.
If you manually sign up right now, you'll get it at a discounted rate. Otherwise, it's $50 regular price for the training. It's going to be 1 hour live with us, the three of us. And like Conrad said, we're going to go through a lot of different principles from a lot of different amazing people, including Bruce Lee, and show you a real structured way to achieve your goals, whether it's in training, self-defense, martial arts, or finance, relationships. You can pretty much apply these principles to anything, and they will work if you stay disciplined.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. There's going to be so much information packed into an hour. We're going to have to power through it, but it is useful. And like we were saying, the model for success is transferable. You can just pick it up and plop it down into whatever you're doing. So looking forward to listening to everyone and sharing some good knowledge with our listeners.
Absolutely.
All right, let's wrap it up. Any other final shout outs we have to give before we say goodbye to everyone? Conrad?
Well, I guess our first in-person seminar will be April 18th in Maryland. So you've got some time to start, if you're on the East Coast, start planning that date, hang out with us. We're going to deliver another exciting weekend. So we look forward to seeing you there.
Patrick, what do you got?
We are working on a online program. I don't want to reveal too much. It will be a slight departure from our combatives programs, but I think if you're into martial arts, you really love this. Again, I don't want to say what it is, but if you're a fan of martial arts
and you're in the JKD concepts camp, you'll
right.
love this program.
Nice.
That's right.
Nice.
Yes, and if you're interested in evolving as a martial artist, then this upcoming online program is going to blow your mind. I know that when Conrad taught me this particular subject, it opened up everything. Like it was like I had I've never taken psychedelics before, but I imagine if I took a mushroom, this is how I would feel in terms of martial arts. So it was mind blowing. So now we're gonna share that with the world, and I'm gonna keep it close to the vest for now until everything's ready to go. But I would say in the first quarter of this year, everybody will be able to get access to it, and it will be mind blowing.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it'll be graduate school for martial artists.
Looking forward to it. Let's see, I've got a ton of stuff coming up. I just released Western Piper Methods Level 2 book.
Woo!
Again, if you want to pick up a copy of that, contact me. I just released On Bladed Combatives. So we were talking about the Combatives Blueprint. It's basically the Combatives Blueprint, but just for bladed combatives.
Oh, I can't wait. The blade nerd. All right.
This is to me for combatives books. I think this is my masterpiece. I think this is
All
as good as it gets.
I can't wait to read the book from the blade nerd. This'll be good.
It's like 300 pages of talking about
Whoa.
stabbing things.
If you're a blade nerd, a Kali or Silat or just blades in general, I think you got to get this book.
Yeah. So that one is it's specifically it's designed for what's the official title? On Bladed Combatives, a modern program for Army knife fighting, I believe was the title I went with.
Cool.
But I deep dived, or I looked at as every bladed system I could find, or at least poked my head in there a little bit, did an analysis and pulled out all right, here's what you need to know, here's what'll help those skills build, and then here's more stuff you can do and some of the benefits of training. You always hear us talk about. I think there's value in training anything and everything. You just got to make sure that's aligned with what your goals are. And I think I did a good job breaking it down. I spent a lot of money and a questionable amount of my personal time researching this. And then when I was oh, the book's basically done, I just got to upload it to Amazon. It took another 24 hours of work. For 4 days, I sat behind the computer and was just powering through things. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a lot of stuff. So those two books are out. I've got reoccurring webinars with Phil Elmore. We kind of take a little fun approach at things. We've got some really, I don't want to reveal any of the topics yet, but if you like movies, we have some interesting movie webinars coming up, and then we've got some interesting. But it uses movie as a framework, and then we touch on a bunch of martial skills from the movie.
Interesting.
So almost not necessarily a fight scene breakdown, but what can I learn from this movie, and what are skills that are actually transferable, and what's complete nonsense. And they share some of my military background stuff. They're pretty good. I'll give you guys a read ahead offline.
Nice.
All right.
And then there's a lot of kind of silly but also educational stuff coming out with Phil in the next couple months. So just kind of stay on the lookout for that. And I had one more. I can't remember. I don't know. Quick shout out to Tenneco Knives. Anesti is a clothing apparel brand I started recently, picked up a bunch of stuff from. Wanted to give them a quick shout out. It's I call it aggressive Christian. It's very, it's all black, very strong, biblical quotes and warrior imagery. So that's really cool. And then I remember it now. Okay, I'm going to appear on the Vanguard Wall podcast. I fly out in about 5 days to Austin, sitting down for a very long interview. It's going to be an 8-hour podcast. It's insane. We deep dive into everything. I saw some of the questions, some of the topics we're going to be covering. It is absolutely insane. So you're not going to want to miss that. You go check out Vanguard Wall podcast. Subscribe to them so you don't miss out that content when it drops.
Dang.
That's it.
Flying you out like a superstar, buddy.
I know, it's crazy. Absolutely
That's awesome.
crazy.
You better bring your sunglasses.
That's awesome.
All right, we'll drop some links in the show notes down below. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and sign up for that webinar before it's too late.
Take care, everyone. See you at the webinar.
Thank you so much, everybody.